I'm going to go ahead and get started just so we can maximize our time. Really excited to introduce Colleen Wilkinson, who's going to be talking to us about trauma-informed care. Colleen, thank you so much for being here. Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. It's funny because we were talking about it last week, and your name came up maybe 500,000 times in the chat the minute the topic was approached. So you appear to be the really clear thought leader in this space.
Well, thank you. It's been an interesting journey of the intersection of trauma-informed care and Montessori over the last few years. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
We're thrilled to have you. Before we dive into Colleen's presentation, I just wanted to share with everyone where our resources live. And there's a lot of them, and they're not very well organized. So forgive me, there's just so many things for us to house. And so there's two places for you to look. So the first thing is you can always just go straight to our homepage. You don't have to remember any links. If you go straight to our homepage, nidomarketing.com, and then scroll down, we've got this great big section. It's the first section you see, and it's COVID-19 resources. And there's the resources page, and then there's the town hall discussions. And these are the two pages to pay attention to. So on the resources page are the more traditional kind of evergreen resources, downloadable content, those types of things. One really important thing is here's the admissions agreement language. We paid for this. We paid an attorney, the gentleman that came and spoke to us, Mr. Walker, created admissions language specifically for Montessori schools based off of the video he did. So this is a really valuable resource here. The video series that Donna did, which is just amazing. And then the ability to subscribe. So there's resource page number 1. And then resource page number 2, oh, that's embarrassing. Let's refresh. There we go. Resource page number 2 is the town hall page, which is also linked to from the homepage. This is where you can always go to register. All of our recordings are on the town hall page. And maybe most importantly is underneath the recordings are the links to the resources that were mentioned in that particular call. Most recently, we have a lot of them, but everybody's been asking, where do we go get a temperature scanning kiosk? We actually found a company that has them in stock, which is great. But you know, a bunch of different things. Brent Bauerband did just an amazing job of answering the Q&A doc. All of his answers are in blue. So if you have any questions about what happened on that call, he really put in a lot of time, effort, and energy. So super grateful to Brent for that. Matt provided his P&P for Bergamo, which is, I think, really valuable. So just make sure you're watching the resources page. And if you have anything to share, anything that schools can benefit from or profit from, please feel free to share it with me, and I'll make sure it makes its way to the resources page. I'm trying to limit the emails that I'm sending because I have a sense that I might be a little overwhelming. So I'm doing one follow-up after town halls and then one email early in the week. And I'll be doing my best to catalog the resources inside of those emails. Other than that, I think that's all I've got from a resources perspective. So Colleen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate so many of you having a heart for this topic and understanding how important this is going to be for our students and our communities moving forward. What we're experiencing right now is what's called in the big picture a collective trauma. So this is a trauma that we are all experiencing together. It's a society-wide, right? Collective trauma. It's not the first one of my teaching career, sadly. You know, I started teaching right as 9/11 was happening. So we've experienced collective traumas before as a society, and sadly probably will again. So this is really a moment when we can really think deeply about the way we interact with students, the way we interact with teachers, the way we interact as a team, and create trauma-informed schools. Now, I've been talking about trauma for about 5 years with other teachers. So I'd like to give a little bit of background about myself and how I came to this work. I, like I said, was teaching right at 9/11, and I was a very young teacher, and I didn't really know what I was seeing, and I was teaching in a traditional pre-K environment. So I would have these students build block towers and knock them down with little planes over and over again as they were trying to construct understanding. Children construct understanding through play, and so they would have to play out those scenarios. So then in the classroom, in my community, I was serving a family who had adopted children from Russia, and I was seeing things about attachment that I didn't know before. And so I learned a lot from that family. And then I, like many people, decided I was a really great teacher, so I would obviously be a really great parent. So I went and adopted my daughter from foster care when she was 7 years old, and learned all about therapeutic parenting. And I'm not super great at compartmentalizing. So when I was learning about therapeutic parenting, naturally those parenting things I was learning and the way to discipline in a therapeutic trauma-informed parenting way bled into my classroom. Partially this was wonderful because they just marry together so well. And part of that is because, you know, our friend Maria, she saw people for who they were and she saw what they needed, right? Her method is built on observation, and she was observing and developing her method with children who'd experienced trauma. So she naturally, in our method, there's a lot of trauma-informed work that's just naturally built in. So there's already a marriage there without us having the language for it. So as I was using these therapeutic parenting discipline methods in my classroom, it was so obvious the wonderful impact it was having on the children. And I started talking to my colleagues about it because there were always children that challenge us, right? There's always going to be some child that has something else going on and we're unable to figure out how to help them or unable to see the need behind the behavior. So as I started talking to other teachers, I realized I was not the only one having struggles as a teacher, as a parent. And so I really started developing relationships and talking at conferences with people and started presenting my ideas at conference. And then from there, it's kind of taken off into some consulting work where I've done this professional development for teachers in schools across the US now for quite some time. So as we start to move forward, what I want you to do is two things. Whenever I give this sort of talk, I talk about the fact that trauma is incredibly prevalent. Sometimes we call it adverse childhood experiences. That sometimes is a limiting view, but childhood trauma is extraordinarily prevalent in our society. The best estimates are that at least 70% of people, at least 70% of people have experienced at least one childhood trauma. So at some point, if it feels big feelings for you, that would be very normal. So I always say to take care of yourself. If you start to feel overwhelmed or it brings up old stuff for you, that's okay. That's part of the process. So do be aware of your own feelings as I'm talking, and take care of yourself. So I wanted to sort of give that disclaimer for you. But I want to share with you, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Oh, Kasem, can I share my screen or?
Yes, ma'am, you should be able to.
Okay, let's see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing when I try.
Oh, here we go. So sorry.
Okay, special participant.
Alrighty, I just changed that. Would you mind?
Okay, perfect. It did that for me. Okay. So I have put together just some bullet points for today, and then I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A, so we can talk about what this might look like for us as we start to think about returning to school. Some background again for me is that I am a Montessori teacher in a classroom. I teach, and I'm the director of the program as well. We have been open for essential services since since April 6th was our first day. So we've had children in care since then. We're a year-round school, so we're about to expand our services. We're still building what that looks like based on the state of Texas. So I've already had some experience reintegrating children who were out for a short time, some who were out for a little longer, and now we're anticipating how to reintegrate children who have been out for several months. And the four core principles of trauma-informed care are these: predictability, flexibility, connection, and empowerment. The nice thing about a Montessori classroom is that there's a lot of predictability, right? Children know how to get lessons, they know what to do. And part of the way we do that is through our routines, right? Every year when we start school, whether it's in the fall or again in January when we come back from break, we build in predictability. And that is a piece that is common across classrooms. So even right now, because of the the nature of the regulations that we're under. I've had to shift children into different classrooms, but they're with a Montessori trained teacher who has the same materials. So even though it was a flex moment for them, they had to be flexible. Some things for them were predictable, right? I have the pink tower available to me. I have these certain things available to me. So we're going to want to continue to create predictability, whether that's routines of the day. We're going to eat lunch the same way every day. We're going to do the same, you know, maybe we bake bread on Monday, or whatever routine of the week that you have. That predictability is so helpful. The next part is flexibility. For us, the adults, we must be flexible, right? Especially in this moment when there's so many unknowns. There's going to have to be times when we have to flex our philosophy, right? Like right now, the government restrictions don't allow me to have self-serve snack, right? So I'm having to flex even on my core value system of philosophy, right? So we're flexing, and children will develop flexibility the more we give them opportunities for predictability. They can flex within those systems. So flexibility, and knowing that sometimes the children might need us to flex. If I sit down and my goal is to give this lesson, and by golly, I want them to have this lesson, and I'm so committed to them having this academic content. When I get down and I sit with a child, if I'm attuned to what they need, and it's not the moment for that lesson, right? I the adult, have to be flexible, right? And then connection. A lot of this is going to be about connection, right? Creating connected relationships, rebuilding, repairing, or reconnecting with children. Some of us might have lost staff, so we're having to have new connections built. For our teams, adult teams will have to connect differently perhaps, but definitely for the children to connect to new adults if they're having to change environments, that's going to be really important. And then the last part of this is empowerment. And then of course, one of the beautiful things about Montessori is the sense of empowerment and intrinsic motivation that go along with the core philosophy. So we're going to have to find maybe some new ways to do that within our classrooms. But there is a piece where we can give children power and share power with them. And I believe that's part of the philosophy that we all know and love, right? So how can we do this? A big piece is about creating felt safety. And felt safety is something that you don't even realize that you do, but we do it all the time. It's that thing when I come over to your house, if you invited me over right now, you would probably have a snack prepared, assuming we're meeting for the first time and we're not just like really good friends who I just show up at your house uninvited. But if I'm coming over to talk, you might have like, hey, I've got some snacks. You might offer me a drink. Your restroom would be available to me as a guest, right? All those things are about creating felt safety. I know there's going to be food. I know I have availability to have water or liquids. I can take care of my personal needs, right? Those are felt safety things. And so we're going to have to do that for children. And it's being really intentional about it. It's really, it's most common that we go, oh, they know what's available to them. But when we think of creating felt safety, intentional, right? Out loud safety, we need to give them that opportunity to do that. For our youngest children, especially, this might be that as they're approaching the gate to the school, I take the mask off and say, hey, it's still me. And then as they come closer, I cover my face back up, right? So that they can see felt safety. Are we being intentional in showing them and telling them that they're safe? The second core concept in responding in a trauma-informed way is that we see the need behind the behavior, right? Behavior is communication. And we really do know this as Montessorians. This is one of those key pieces that for me, when I learned this as a therapeutic parent, I was like, oh, that's Montessori. Because we observe the child to assess what they need, to assess what's going on academically. We can take that same sense of observation and translate that to behavioral and social emotional needs, right? So we're going to observe and see what's the need behind the behavior. Has this child been worried about food? Has this child had a traumatic experience in their home space? Is this child having trouble adjusting back to school or to a new classroom, to a new environment, to a new adult? What is this child trying to communicate with their behavior? They don't always have the words. And frankly, even in this pandemic, the adults don't always have the words, right? I don't always have the words for how I'm feeling. Sometimes I need to sit with it for a little bit. But our behaviors and our feelings and emotions come out sideways as behaviors. So really trying to dig in deep to see what that is. And what the need is behind the behavior informs how we're going to respond to the behavior. If I can meet the need behind the behavior, then the unwanted behavior will dissipate, right? And sometimes it's not always the big explosive behaviors that are, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease is kind of how the saying goes. But sometimes those aren't the children that I am the most worried about. I'm the most worried about over-compliant, quiet, withdrawn. Externalizers is one thing, right? But a child who's an internalizer is a different emotional space. So I want to be able to support all those learners, but sometimes those quiet, withdrawn ones get, lost in the mix because they're not creating a problem. So I want us, as we move forward, to be really aware of those students. And that another core concept is that we have to have connection before correction, right? Who do you as an adult learn best from? Someone who you're connected to, someone who you trust, someone who you have a relationship with. Someone who you have a relationship can turn to you and say, hey, here's some critical feedback. Let's have this crucial conversation. And you're actually taking something away from that conversation. The same is true for children, right? Their ability to learn and to correct behavior is based on their relationship with us and that connection. So sometimes it's really valuable to think about, have I taken the time to develop a deep, meaningful relationship with this person whom I'm about to provide correction, and know that the most meaningful correction comes in context of relationship. In the moment, we go back to the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, who gives us the 3 R's: regulate, reconnect, and reason. So when we are reacting to a big behavioral problem, a big behavioral incident, the first thing we want to do is regulate. And we talk a lot about teaching children to self-regulate. Sometimes we meet adults who do not know how to self-regulate. Many adults do not know how to self-regulate. So when I think of regulation especially for primary, lower L, but really all the way up, and even with adults, I think about co-regulation. So just like I wouldn't turn to you and say, hey, you should calm down, because chances are that's not going to calm you down, right? It would not for me. I would not feel calm if you yelled that at me. I'm going to start co-regulating with a child. So that might mean if they're getting it louder, I'm getting quieter and calmer and taking deep breaths, right? And saying, I hear you, and just affirming their feelings. Because if I'm also getting upset while they're getting upset, then we've started some nuclear arms race, right? That we don't have to have that huge power struggle together. To co-regulate, we're both calming ourselves down, right? I'm staying calm and they're calming their body down. Then we can reconnect. I don't abandon you because of your feelings. I don't abandon you because of your behavior. You're still safe, loved, and a part of my community, someone who I care about. And then when we're self-regulated and connected, then we can get into reasoning. Because when we are in the brain, right, here's my little handy brain model. Self-regulation happens in the amygdala, in the reptilian brain. That reconnection is part of the social emotional brain, the limbic system. And then reasoning happens in the prefrontal cortex. And we can't reach the prefrontal cortex till all those other systems are online, right? So we have to start with calming that amygdala down. Then we can get our limbic system good. And then we can start talking about what should we do differently next time? This is why this didn't work out. This is why we can't do the thing you want to do right now. Because there's going to be a lot of times as we return to school and as we move forward that we want to return to, normal, quote unquote, or our children are used to things being one way. And we're going to be having to tell them that it's not that way anymore. When we first opened back up, I was in a different classroom because we were shuffling, trying to make sure every, licensing was being covered the way they want us to in this moment. And a child who was in the classroom, that was their classroom, and I was the one who was new. And she looked at me and she said, that's not how we do that here. You're doing it wrong. And she was not wrong. She was correct. I had entered her space as the adult and was telling her, now we're not putting back on the work on the shelf. You have to take it to the sanitation station, right? To be cleaned before it goes back on the shelf. That's not how we do that here. Well, I know that is different. Some things are going to be different. So as we encounter more and more things that we're having to tell children to change what's been predictable, right, for them, what's been the routine, we're going to encounter children pushing back against that, right? And we have to remember that relationship is the most important over everything. Academics will come, your relationship is the core, because your relationship with children is the inoculation against childhood trauma. Lots of people say things like, oh, children are so resilient. And I really wish that was true. I really do. They have opportunities for resilience if we have relationships. All of the childhood trauma that people experience adds up to a lot of outcomes that are not positive for their health. There's a ton of research to support that. But what we know and what research tells us is that the thing that mitigates those negative effects of childhood trauma is having a positive relationship with someone in their life, whether it's a teacher, a coach, an aunt, a parent. We can't prevent childhood trauma from happening. People are gonna get divorced. Here in Houston, you know, a couple of years ago, we had a big old hurricane. I can't control that there's a pandemic, right? There's 100% no way I could put my child in a bubble and assure that they would have no childhood trauma. And maybe I wouldn't even want to, but there's just no way I could. So we have to know that it's the relationship, the solid, connected, feeling seen and loved and valued, that is the inoculation against childhood trauma. So I just want us to own that. So I wrote it down. So if everyone can hold that in their hearts, this is the piece. And I know that people are afraid of the summer slide on steroids, that everyone's kids are going to be behind. I read a really wonderful op-ed, I feel like it was in the New York Times maybe, where a guy said, a gentleman who had like a PhD from Harvard, he said, you know, I spent 2nd through 4th grade in a Syrian camp, refugee camp. Your kids are going to be fine. Like kids miss school. Things happen, right? Most of our children the academic piece will come, but it won't if they don't have solid relationships. We can't get to prefrontal cortex without feeling safe and loved. It's part of who we are as human beings. So I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. I did want to just touch base really quickly on some resources. There's right now there's 2 free programs. I think they're free maybe through the end of, I don't know if it's the end of May or the end of June, but Star Commonwealth has some just credit hours you can take real fast online. There's also trust-based relational intervention from TCU. There's some videos online about that. That is 100% my favorite style of trauma-informed care, trust-based relational intervention. I teach classes, graduate level classes. They're credit courses, 1 credit courses from Dominican University of California. If you're interested in individual continuing ed, those are not with a Montessori slant. They're just available to everyone. I do consulting work. My website's there and my Instagram. A lot of people will do a class with me and then follow me on Instagram for sort of that wraparound piece. So that's just a brief touch on resources, and we can talk more about them. But I wanted to have the opportunity also to answer some questions and partner with all of you who are in this same pandemic moment, because while I've been doing trauma-informed care and while I have lived through a collective trauma before, I don't think there's anyone out here who could claim themselves to be the experts on pandemic recovery at this moment in time. So if there are thoughts or questions, I'd love to address them.
And feel free to drop your questions into chat, or you can, if you'd like, unmute yourself and we can have a direct conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colleen, I have a question for you that I honestly didn't think about initially.
Okay.
And this will sound ignorant. This is coming from the perspective of a parent, but it didn't really occur to me that this type of situation, circumstance could result in behavioral issues.
Right.
I'd be interested in, just from a prognosticative standpoint, how bad do you think that gets, and does it get worse the more time the child is away from school?
You know, it really depends on the child. What I've noticed in the children that have returns is that they appreciate the return to what is their known normal. But I also have children who are thriving in their home environments, right? And who, I mean, if you think about it, even like when I was a child, not everybody's mom went to work and went to school, right? So there are children for whom this is wonderful. I think it would also be unfair of me to not note that there are children who are thriving at home and may find that this home learning or distance learning away from situations that might be happening in school, like bullying or racial bias or any of those things that we know just happen in school environments, might be better for them. So that's just a fair thing that might happen. That being said, for the children who need school, who crave the routine and the structure of school, I think it's really valuable for them to have as much creation of routine in their home life as possible. It really is very personality dependent. But a lot of the behaviors that we've seen emerge in my classroom as I'm talking to parents, and that would be very normal just in the realm of child development, are that oppositional, and this is something adults do too, so I don't want to blame the 3 to 5 year olds in the world, but like, this is the kind of moment where people might say something like, I don't want the pink cup. The pink cup is not what I asked for, and be losing it about the pink cup, when in reality, the problem is I am anxious about life. Everything is tossed-turvy, not the way it's supposed to be, and I cannot handle not drinking out of the pink cup today, right? So it's those little, and knowing that sometimes the behavior comes out sideways, and that it would almost be more abnormal for children not to have any anxiety in this moment than it would be for them to, of course, have anxious moments and for that to be expressed.
Thank you for that, Colleen. We have a lot of questions now, so I'll just start from the top.
Perfect.
We've had multiple requests for any resources for parents, specifically now while they're away from school, and then possibly when they come back.
Sure. My favorite book for parents is called The Connected Child. Now, it is written through a lens for adopted children. However, those resources are the same. I mean, it's trauma-informed parenting is what it is, therapeutic parenting. It's called The Connected Child by Karen Purvis. So that's a really great one. Another one is Beyond Behaviors by Mona de la Hook. And I have a book list that I will make sure you get for your resources section as well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Beyond Behaviors.
Yeah, by Mona de la Hook.
Okay. Are your children currently in the same environment, or are they in new ones?
Yes, all of that. So some of them are in the same classrooms, and right now, and this may, I'm saying what's happening right today, but this could change so quickly. Some are in their same community. Some are in a high-risk campus and low-risk campus. We're in the medical center of Houston, so we have varying levels of adult exposure. But as things open up, that'll change. So some of them had to shift, and some of them were just already in a space that was correct for their level of exposure.
Charlie's asking, I'm curious about what kind of behavior you're seeing in the children of essential workers who are in your school now.
We've seen some increase in anxiety. We've seen some increase in the I don't want to go to school. Some of it is related to understanding that something is happening. Some of it is related to the space change. And and some of it is, it was for me, some of it was predictable because I have a really established relationship with my students, in that I could sort of predict who was gonna struggle, you know what I mean? Where, you know, like I know if I had a friend who's been anxious since the day I met them 3 years ago, right? And then I'm like, oh, this might be a struggle for them. So a lot of those kind of behaviors where it gets, again, that like behavior that seems to not make sense, and then later that sort of shows itself as anxiety about the situation. The challenge of our school is that usually our parents can walk into the classroom. We have an open door policy, so they usually walk their children all the way in. Well, now they're having to stop at the door, get their temperature taken, not come in. So there's like another transition that's changed for the children. So they're not happy about that. The children are not happy about that, right? And it's strange. So they had to do some adjusting to that. So big feelings, harder goodbyes. And I think also another thing to think about that I didn't really think about until I got into the classroom with these children is that the lower number of children in the classroom feels weird to them. They don't have as many peers. And so there's more like adult intervention in their life than the typical classroom. There's fewer friends to observe working. There's not as many same age peers to work with, not as many friends to choose from. So there's been some like, I miss my friends that I haven't established relationship, and they're having to establish deeper connections with these children who they know, but weren't necessarily their core group who they would have chosen to work with. So there's been some like new friend and less friend concerns.
I think this is more of a comment than a question, but Monica said, I heard you speak of Karen Purvis and Ideal. Thank you. Helpful in speaking to staff.
Yes, Ideal. The Ideal response is really powerful. So there's a video on YouTube that explains it much better than I could. But when we have one of the Karen Purvis TBRI methods is the Ideal response. And when we're talking to children or when we're redirecting children, we think of Ideal as immediate, which is right away, right? We know it's from brain research, 3 seconds, they get the most feedback. Direct, we're gonna say exactly what we expect. Speak directly to what's happening. Efficient, fewer words, tell them exactly what is expected, what needs to happen, or what's going to happen. Sometimes as Montessorians, we get a little wordy with our explanations. We need and dial it back a little bit and just be efficient with our words. Action-based, again, saying what should happen. Put the pencil in my hand, please. Put the knob cylinder on the floor. Don't throw it, put it on the floor, right? And L level, and the last one is L, leveled it behavior. The children are never bad or you know, we don't want to make children feel responsible or negative about having big feelings, but we have to tailor our responses to being leveled at behavior and never leveled at the worth or value of the child.
Donna's asking, what about the trauma coming ahead from people distancing and wearing masks and acting like we're all dangerous in the sense of anyone can affect anyone?
Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of how we flip it and how we frame it for children. What I've been saying to children is, oh, I see you're wearing a mask. We're all being so safe. So instead of communicating that, oh, it's dangerous, we're going to communicate, look how safe we're being. We're all keeping ourselves safe. Now, do I think in 30 years, we're going to have a generation of children who are much more germ aware than ours? Yes, of course, right? We're impacting a sensitive period in these children's development. That's just a given. But I think if we really are cautious about our framing and think about saying what is working well, look how we're all working together to keep everybody safe. All these doctors are working together to find a solution. All these people are wearing masks so that we can keep each other safe. Isn't that wonderful? And think about the framing of that. You know, will they still have fears? Absolutely. And there will be children who need to seek psychological help. I mean, there's going to be children and parents who need guidance from a therapeutic source who is a expert specifically for those children. But definitely, I think framing is going to help how we put it into their consciousness.
That's brilliant. I'm going to borrow that at home. Emily asks, we're scheduled to reopen June 1. What are the 3 top things my staff should be prepared to do to support parents as they re-enter? Also, the 3 time things to remember when reconnecting with the children.
So I would say that for the parents, doing a lot of opportunities to just check in with them and say, hey, how are you? For me, what we did first before we reopened is I called every single parent personally just to say, hi, how are you? I've been thinking about you. How's your child? And again, just taking that time to be like, hey, this isn't a business transaction. I care about you. Right? I care about your family. I want to know that you're okay. How are you dealing? How are you coping? And ask them if there's something you can help them with, because sometimes some of them have said things like, oh, my child's devolved into the world of all they want to do is superhero play. And I can say, yes, that's very normal during a crisis where children will engage in superhero play because it gives them that feeling of courage or strength. And just letting them hear that we are masters of our craft and understand children's behavior and that we're there to support them and whatever their child might be going through, and is really powerful. And the next piece is just being conscientious in our communication, that we're communicating. There's going to be a lot of communication, right? Protocols, this is happening, that is happening, this has changed, that has changed, but making sure we're not being too abrupt, and also not starting or ending every email with like, in this unprecedented time, we all, it gets old. Like, we know it's an unprecedented time. We got it. We can only hear it so many times, but just saying, like, being authentic and hoping that people are well, and being really connected and letting them hear your most authentic voice, I think is really the most powerful piece. And this, say the second part about the children again for me.
Oh, sorry, I've been deleting as I've been asking. So
oh, that's okay. I think it was about the children, how the teachers are going to interact with the children. And I would say warm, 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 and more warm. And think about some parameters that you can put in place. Like if your state regulations say the teachers need to wear a mask all the time, then maybe saying like, stand up at circles, stand back so they can see your face for a second, then put it back on. So, you have more than 6 feet, be safe, obviously. But, and being aware that your staff might have big feelings too about their own safety and their own family's concerns. So being aware of that piece, and also just talking to them about setting their own boundaries. Are they going to feel safe hugging the children? Who in the community feels safe hugging the children? Who in the community feels safe being the screener? And really being in tune with where they're at is going to be really helpful to administrators as they help sort of staff and help figure out what's happening in the building. But really keeping that connection, and I think even saying to the children things like, I'm so glad you're here, and that eye contact piece is going to be even more important than it ever was before. Doing little things that I think we do unconsciously, but being really intentional and conscientious about doing things like, we sing them good morning song and I say everybody's name in the room and I look them in the eye during so in the morning, I'll say like, good morning, Kasem. Good morning, Eileen. Good morning, Julie. It's nice to see your face. And I'm like looking each child in the eye really intentionally, right? Those pieces become even more important to really connect and really have those moments with children that bond us as a community.
Sahira is asking, will the slides from this call be available on the resources section? Would you mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah, I can share those with you, no problem.
Thank you. And Wally asks, how does an adult's flexibility impact predictability for the child?
Right. So the thing is that we, the adults, have the ability to flex to the needs of the children. They don't always have as much ability to flex to our needs. Unfortunately, it's a pandemic, so they're going to have to, right? Like, there's going to be moments when they have to flex, whether that's, no, we don't all go out on the playground at the same time anymore, so you're not going to see your brother's class. They have to flex, right? I can flex to knowing that that child is going to be upset about that, preparing them ahead of time. I can flex to, it's going to take longer to get kids in the door. And I can flex to, my circle might not start on time because they're all not here for screening. I might flex to, a child wants to spend a longer time in practical life because they're really actually working on self-regulating skills and need to flex on my level of classroom expectations in that moment, right? So those are the ways that adults have to be the one to make those shifts in what's going to happen.
I'm going to pause just real quick and ask everybody if there's a topic that you would like us to what am I trying to say?
Talk about next week?
Talk about next. Thank you so much. And I just blanked. If there's a topic you'd like us to talk about next week, please start dropping those in the chat so I can build the poll now and get everybody time to start voting. Next question from Brittany. As my school's HR rep, do you have any recommendations for how administrators can start to model these trauma-informed care behaviors of staff? Ways to start building predictability and opportunities for reconnection with staff?
Yeah, so I think, again, that first piece of like having everyone connected, whether that's some team meetings, small group meetings, some phone calls. I know face-to-face meetings won't always be possible, but when they are, people can come in and just, again, showing that authentic caring. And also some of it's going to be about finding out, and I know this is sort of twofold. One, it's that authentic caring piece, that authentic connection to our staff, but also I'm going to be finding out who lives with their great grandparent and is really concerned about coming back to work, who lives with a spouse who's a cancer survivor and is really, you know, having some concerns, right? So you're going to get to have some deep, meaningful conversations with them and find out where they are, find out how they're doing, find out what worked well. I think a really important, valuable tool for folks is to humbly ask, like, what worked well when we had to shift to this crisis so fast. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for your dedication to the children. What worked? What didn't work? Because I think we also need to anticipate that this might happen again in the fall, right? I mean, we can hope not, but there may come a time when we have to shift this rapidly again. So asking them what worked, what didn't work, what we could do to support them moving forward is going to be really powerful.
I have a question, Colleen, if it's kind of like maybe more of a personal question, but you mentioned you're the teacher as well as the director. Yeah. We're in the same situation in my school where we haven't opened yet. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing the Zoom, the administrative part, the PPP, the whole shebang, as you know. Yeah.
14-hour days, I hear you.
Yes, exactly. How do you take care of yourself as well in this? Because I find like, okay, we have our family, you know, and we have this, and then all of a sudden we have to bear all this on our shoulders. What would you suggest would be something for us to do as also administrators / everything else?
So absolutely. So one of the things that I've done, I feel like that has helped me as I've been trying to do the on-campus administrative Zoom and planning and parent-teacher conferences and all this kind of stuff, is that one, I involve my family a little bit. So like my classroom has a weekly dance party that one of our Zooms that we do as a group. It's about connection. But really my class just wants to see each other, and it's literally a dance party. So I make a playlist, like some like Earth, Wind and Fire, and my whole family, my wife, my daughter, myself, and our dogs are like out there jamming, and that's BAM 5:30. That's what we do every Friday. After that 5:30 dance party, it's a 15-minute dance party. I am done working until Sunday at noon. And then Sunday at noon, I mean, unfortunately, I wish I could say it was till Monday morning. That's not real life right now. I have to start working on Sunday afternoon. So I start then, but I really am pretty dedicated to taking every Saturday and not, am I thinking about it still? Sure. But not answering an email. I'm not, unless it's an emergency, which it's usually not, it can hold, right? So being really able to separate that and step away and hold those boundaries are going to be really important. Another thing I think that's going to be important too is for all of us to do some really deep reflective work and keep those like boundaries, because not only is everyone else experiencing this trauma, we are experiencing it too, right? We are going to have loss, grief, just anxiety about this uncertainty. So doing our own work, whether that's reaching out and needing some therapeutic help ourselves, needing to talk to a friend, having Zoom, you know, friend time, whether that's cocktail hour or, you know, just whatever, book club on Zoom with friends, and taking that, the other thing I think that I've done that helped me is I started listening to a fiction audiobook, which I love to read, but I end up getting sort of like, oh, what child development book has coming out, right? And so I've read all these things, but I was like, no, I'm listening to this fiction book, and really taking that time to self-care is going to be really important.
From
Thank
Elizabeth, can you speak to trauma-infused play that we can incorporate into children's house classes? Increase dramatic play, have blocks or dolls available, etc.
Yeah, so there's some really good value to that. So our school operates in such a way that we're open all year round and all day. And so there's always a Montessori trained teacher there, but it might be a really great time to, like I was saying, with having some blocks or magnet tiles or whatever, and having that available in a like practical life, anybody can do me kind of shelf, or a before or after care program, depending on how everybody's school's running differently. So building that in, having like a small, where you have the farm, and maybe you have now a doll house with some dolls where children can act out scenarios. Some common themes in children's play are, doctor, hospital, sickness, and they're gonna play, if you're taking temperatures every morning, they're gonna play taking temperatures, right? Delivery people, Amazon boxes, those things are going to be common themes in play because they're not going anywhere. People are coming to them, right? Like I said, superhero play, or like police courage related play, very common, as they kind of increase their need to put on that cloak of, I feel courageous, I feel capable, I can do anything. So those are some common themes you might see emerge. So it's important that we take the time to observe, and what we will learn as we're observing that pretend play and the way they engage with each other, is that we can observe and find out what they know, what they don't know, and what they're assuming without having context. So there may be places we need to go and fill in, because you might see who's really anxious because they think everyone's gonna die, when what really is happening is they've overthought it, and we need to actually give them some concrete information, right?
Colleen, that was my question. I was just wondering if you would encourage doing anything specific to, like, should we structure their play? Should we invite them to do more, or should we leave that?
I would maybe put it on the shelf and see what happens, right? It's going to depend a little bit on who your students are, where they're at, what their life experience has been like during this time. You might do some role play at a circle with puppets or something like that, where you are kind of acting it out. And I would say it's 100% appropriate to model and say, whoo, I felt worried, or I feel overwhelmed, or this is what I'm going to take some deep breaths right now because I'm feeling really tired today, or whatever. And having the same thing we would, honestly, I hope we're doing that all the time, but modeling our own coping skills for them is really valuable. So that might be something you do during circle, but and I would put it available to them, and maybe even give a lesson like you would any other material, and then leave it. I think we're going to learn more from leaving it open-ended than to structure it.
Forgive me, everyone. I've got time for about 2 more questions, and then I have to introduce another topic that we have prepared. Eileen asked, would it be a good idea to initiate conversations or activities to bring out opportunities for children to bring out some anxiety?
Say that again?
Sorry, I was very fast. Would it be a good idea to initiate conversations or activities to bring out opportunities for children to bring out some anxiety?
Yeah, I think that it's perfectly normal to like talk about it at circle. Like, this was really strange. There's some really great books out there about wearing a mask, or there's one called This Year Was Different, that are available online. I can definitely get some of those for you for the resource section, where you can kind of read. And I think it would be unhelpful to pretend like nothing has gone wrong, right? It's not, we can try to get back to normal, but we also have to acknowledge what's happening. So doing that, like I said, like maybe puppet play, storytelling, talking about it, and modeling the coping mechanisms, really powerful.
Laura just asked, is Colleen or Nido offering anything similar to this for parents? Do you have anything pre-prepared?
I don't have anything pre-prepared for parents, but you're welcome to email me. We could always set something up if I have a group of people who want to do stuff. I can do webinars. I do them all the time. I have one on the AMS website that's available for folks from me. And then there are also, well, like today I'm doing a restorative justice one for teachers, but so whenever a group gets together, I'm happy to do that for them.
Colleen, I don't want to over commoditize your offering, so forgive me if this is an overstep of my bounds, but would you be willing, if we paid you from a consultative perspective, to create a video recording that our member base could then send to their parents?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's plan on doing that. That would be awesome.
Okay.
I want to make a note. All right, last question comes from Laura. Parents of my toddlers who will be in new environments in August are wondering if it would be better for the children at this point to keep them home and maintain some consistency, or send them back for a few weeks for the social exposure, even though things will look different and there won't be as many children. What do you think?
I think it's going to be very child specific, right? Child and family specific. Are they doing Montessori in the home? Are they feeling overwhelmed? Some children are going to need to come back and just be like, oh, this is a school. This is the place where I come. For other children, if it's a matter of like, if you stay home 3 more weeks, then you're moving up to 3 to 6, then it might be in their best interest to just wait, right? It really depends on the child. And it kind of depends on the family's needs too. And I think it's an important moment to realize that not only do we serve the children, but we serve the whole family. And so there might be children for whom it might be easier on them to have one transition in a few weeks and just stay home, but for whom the parents are overwhelmed and exhausted, and it is time for those children to come back into school for the mental health of their whole community. So I think that's a really child specific, and maybe even program specific. It depends on kind of what your setup looks like. Is your setup in different buildings, so they're coming to a whole new building where they're not going to see their toddler teacher anymore, or is it more closely related? So yeah, I would have to think about that on a child by child basis, a family by family basis.
Colleen, you've been amazing. I can't say how much I
you.
appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. Really grateful to you. Somebody
Thank
wanted
you
to hire you to engage with you. How does that work? Go to your website and contact you?
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of me is you could go to my website and kind of see what the overview of my typical professional development offerings are. I can shift anything I've done in person to online. I do webinars all the time for different schools or different organizations. In addition, you can always email me at traumainformedmontessori, all one word, @gmail.com. I'll say it again, that's traumainformedmontessori@gmail.com.
I'll drop that in chat too.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that people really enjoy working with me specifically when they're thinking about trauma for Montessori schools, because I have both pieces, the Montessori training and the trauma-informed training. So it is that overlap in how so like when I do trauma-informed care with a traditional school setting, I have to start with stuff like, so sticker charts don't work. And when I work with Montessori folks, I'm like, okay, we're already past that point, right? We're already 2 steps ahead. So we're starting at a 201 level, and I really appreciate that about our Montessori community. So I'd be happy to work with schools, whether we want to work with your whole teaching team, because trauma-informed care works best when it is school-wide and infused from beginning to end. So we can work together to create a community that really serves the needs of everyone in this moment.
I've dropped a link in chat for next week's topic, and one of the topics that was asked for, Colleen, was trauma-informed care part 2.
Okay.
So you know, so you were very popular. But everybody on the call, please don't forget to vote. This is exactly how we make that decision. With the few minutes we have left, Donna DeHusteler actually has an offer to make to our community that I think is of immense value. Her husband is a Harvard-educated, brilliant business consultant, and he does financial planning for people, for companies. And he's offered to do it for a handful of schools, absolutely free of cost, to help figure out the projections and some of what's necessary in order to maintain solvency. So Donna, are you here? I see your name on my list, but I don't see you because there's 100 people.
I'm here.
Hey, we did it. Will you tell us about that system, Donna?
Sure. So I have been sitting listening to everybody for weeks, and everybody's trying to figure out, how do we do this, and what's it going to cost, and how's it going to impact the bottom line, and are we going to reduce tuition, are we going to have to lay off staff, what's it going to look like? the small business development arm of the SBA has been using a program for about 15 years. And that program is called Profit Sense. And what it does for small businesses is allows them to take one or two variables in the program, change them, and see instantly not just how that affects this year, but long term what that's going to look like for their business.
Oh, Donna, I think we lost you. Always at the most opportune time from Zoom. While Donna's coming back online, I've seen the program, and what's nice about it is oh, sorry, she's back.
Yes.
What we were looking for is a handful of schools that wouldn't mind volunteering, potentially 3 to 5, because we'd like to build a case study around this. Again, it's free. It probably takes about, I imagine, an hour of your time. I'm terrified of numbers, and from a financial perspective, I'm a data-driven marketer, but my P&L always baffles me. And I saw the product and was really impressed with what he was able to put together.
Can you hear me, Casa?
Yes, we did it. You're back.
Oh my God. Every time I try to talk, I swear, some big brother is watching. So anyway, let's make it really short. I've been using the program at our school for several years. What it allows me to do is see if I raise tuition, what does that look like? If I increase salaries, what does that look like? Well, in this particular time period, we're not looking at raising everything. We're looking at what does it look like to cut. And it takes 3 to 5 years of basic financial data to create the model. And that takes about 30 to 40 minutes for somebody who already knows how to use a model or how already has the financial data. I don't think anybody on this call has that time. You raise your hand if you have time, if 30 to 40 minutes extra to create a model. And no hands went up, funniest thing. What Michael is offering to do and what we're looking for today is 3 to 5 schools that either have a dedicated finance manager, business manager, or someone on their board that works with all their finances, so they're familiar with the school finances, to help us customize the model for Montessori schools so that the factors that are easiest to change and that would allow you to see what happens are absolutely instant. So what's most important in Montessori school? How much tuition we get in each program? What's important from the expense side? Well, staff, absolutely. Does this raise our insurance costs? What does that look like? What if everybody comes part-time instead of part-day? Those kind of things, we can create that model that then would work for all Montessori schools or most Montessori schools. So that's what we're looking for right now, is 3 to 5 schools. It's absolutely free, and Michael would work with you individually as a school.
Donna, may I share your email if people are interested?
Absolutely. Please share my email. Please,
I'm going to drop that email in chat. If you don't mind, contact Donna directly. She's over here for me. I don't know where she's for you. But contact Donna directly, and Donna will help coordinate that. The voting is pretty clear for next week is learning lessons from those who have already reopened. What I'd love to do is maybe split our time up in 10 to 15 minute increments and then offer those to anybody who wants to present. So if you've already opened and you have learning lessons or would like to be involved with the Q&A, please email me. I'll drop my email in, to chat. And I'd like to get just a really solid lineup of folks so that we can do maybe like a rapid fire sharing session. And so next week might be a little bit messy, but hopefully fun and enlightening and all those things as well. Donna, and I cut you off. I'm so sorry. I was trying to get that out before.
Not at all. No.
Awesome.
No, and it looks like people are willing to volunteer, so we will be in touch.
Yeah, this is great. Colleen, thank you so much. Donna, thanks so much. Everyone who comes to the calls, we've had 100 people consistently for weeks.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. So really excited to see everybody. next week. And if you want to volunteer to be one of our presenters, you can come with slides. You can come just to chat. However you want to do that, just, you know, whatever value you want to bring, we'll be eager to have. And that's all I got.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
So I'll just end this awkwardly and hang up. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Appreciate all y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, man.